The emergency exit window shattered at 11:47 on a November night cold enough to kill. Harper dropped into the basement with practiced silence, her sneakers hitting concrete with barely a whisper of sound. The sneakers were 2 sizes too big, pulled from a Goodwill donation bin 3 weeks ago. The soles worn so thin she could feel every crack in the floor through what remained of the rubber. But they were better than nothing, better than the bare feet she had in August, when her mother died blue-faced in a gas station bathroom with a needle still hanging from her arm and foam crusted at the corners of her mouth like something trying to escape from inside her. Jolene. Her mother's name had been Jolene, though she had used at least 6 different last names that Harper could remember. They had moved 17 times in 14 years. Motels with stained carpets and locks that did not work. Cars parked behind strip malls when the money ran out. Shelters when Jolene was sober enough to fake her way through intake interviews, smiling at clipboard, holding social workers who wanted to believe the lie, because believing it meant less paperwork, fewer phone calls, one less broken family, clogging a system already choking on its own failures. And when Jolene disappeared on benders that lasted days, sometimes weeks, Harper learned to make herself small, invisible. The kind of kid whose face social workers' eyes slid right past because acknowledging her meant action, and action meant caring. And caring cost something the system could not afford to spend on one more girl with one more story that sounded like every other story in a file cabinet already overflowing with identical tragedies. 3 months since the overdose. 3 months of Chicago streets teaching Harper lessons no 14-year-old should have to learn. The world does not save girls like her. It erases them, forgets them, steps over their frozen bodies on winter mornings, and keeps walking toward jobs and families and lives that matter to someone. But Harper had survived. She was good at surviving, good at noticing things other people missed, the small details that could mean the difference between safety and danger, between a warm night and a frozen one, between eating and going hungry for another day. Good at being invisible when invisible meant safe. The basement smelled like motor oil and old leather and something metallic she could not quite identify. Not blood. She knew what blood smelled like, had smelled it on her own skin after sleeping in alleys where broken glass hid under newspaper and cardboard. This was different, sharper, chemical. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, finding shapes among the shadows cast by a single bare bulb hanging from exposed rafters. Motorcycle parts lined industrial metal shelves along the far wall. Chrome exhaust pipes caught what little light existed and turned it into small, sharp stars that floated in the gloom like signals from a world she did not belong to. Engine blocks sat wrapped in plastic sheeting on the lower shelves, heavy and still waiting for hands skilled enough to bring them back to purpose. Tools hung on pegboards with the kind of military precision that made Harper's survival instincts scream danger in a voice she had learned never to ignore. Each wrench in its outlined position, each socket in its designated slot, the kind of order that belonged to someone who valued control above all else and did not tolerate disruption in his domain. This was not just any house. Someone lived here who organized his world with the discipline of a man accustomed to violence and consequence. Harper moved through the shadows like smoke, cataloging everything with the automatic precision of a girl whose survival had always depended on knowing exits and hiding spots, and whether the people above her head were the kind who checked their basements at 3 in the morning. Water heater in the corner, rust stains spreading across its base in patterns that looked like maps of places nobody wanted to visit. Utility sink with a dripping faucet that counted seconds in the dark, each drop a tiny metronome marking time in a space where time moved differently than it did on the streets above. A workbench covered in motorcycle manuals, the pages worn soft with years of use, grease stains darkening covers that showed Harley-Davidson logos and engine diagrams Harper could not begin to understand, but which spoke of a life organized around machines and the brotherhood of men who rode them. Then she found the boxes, stacked against the wall in careful towers, each one labeled an angry red marker that seemed to glow with its own warning, even in the dim basement light. Club business, do not touch. Property of Hell's Angels, MC Chicago. Chapter. Harper's blood went cold despite the warmth of the furnace rumbling somewhere behind the far wall. Hell's Angels, motorcycle club. The kind of people who appeared on late-night news reports about bar fights and federal investigations and territory disputes that ended with bodies found in drainage ditches and buildings burned to their foundations. The kind of people who carried guns and did not bother with questions before using them. The kind of people whose basements were absolutely not places you wanted to be, found hiding in when the temperature outside was dropping towards single digits, and your options had narrowed to freezing or trespassing. She should leave. Climb back through that shattered window and find another squat, another abandoned building, another doorway with enough cardboard to block the wind. But then the furnace kicked on with a mechanical groan that sounded like something ancient and merciful waking from a long sleep, and heat poured into the basement in waves that made Harper's frozen fingers ache with sudden life as blood returned to extremities that had been going numb for hours. The pain was extraordinary, the tingling fire of circulation restarting in flesh that had been slowly surrendering to the cold, and Harper pressed her hands against the warm metal casing and felt tears on her cheeks that she had not given permission to fall. The weather report she had glimpsed through a shop window that afternoon said 8 degrees tonight, 8 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to kill a homeless girl in her sleep without waking her first, cold enough that 3 people had died on Chicago streets just last week. She had read about them in a discarded newspaper found in a trash can near Union Station. A man under the Wabash Avenue Bridge, found by joggers who thought he was sleeping until they noticed the frost on his eyelashes and the blue tint spreading across his skin. A woman frozen solid beneath the Roosevelt overpass ice crystals in her hair, like diamonds. Nobody would ever collect her skin, the color of marble in a museum. Nobody would ever visit. A teenager only a year older than Harper found behind a dumpster on South Halsted, with his hands still curled around a lighter that had run out of fuel sometime during the night, his last attempt at warmth preserved in the position of fingers that would never uncurl. The invisible people nobody mourned. The ones the city swept away like litter, like problems solved by pretending they had never existed. Harper found her hiding spot behind the furnace. A gap between the hot metal and the concrete wall, just wide enough for a 14-year-old girl who had gotten very good at making herself small. She curled into that space, pulling her torn jacket tight around shoulders that showed bone through skin because she had not had a real meal in 4 days. Her stomach cramped with hunger so constant it had become a second heartbeat, a rhythm of need that pulsed beneath everything she did and thought and dreamed about when she managed to sleep. 2 days since her last food, a half-eaten burger scraped from a dumpster behind a diner on 5th Street, the bread green at the edges, but still edible if you were desperate enough to redefine what edible meant. And Harper had redefined that word so many times it had lost all connection to its original meaning. Above her footsteps crossed the floor. Heavy boots, deliberate, weighted with purpose and muscle, and a life Harper could not imagine from her hiding spot in the darkness. A man's voice, rough like gravel scraped over asphalt, echoed through the ceiling, joists, and down through the floorboards with enough force that Harper could hear every word as clearly as if he were standing in the basement beside her. "Rosie, lights out now." A small voice answered, young, female, frightened in a way that made Harper's chest tighten with recognition because she knew that particular frequency of fear, had lived inside it, had breathed it like air for years. The fear of disappointing the one person who was supposed to protect you, but who you were never quite sure would stay long enough to follow through. "But Daddy, I am scared, the fire dream again. It keeps getting worse. Every night it gets worse and I cannot make it stop." Silence stretched so long, Harper thought the conversation had ended, that the man had simply walked away from his daughter's fear the way adults so often did when children's terror inconvenienced their schedules. Then the man's voice softened in a way that surprised her, like watching a wolf try to be gentle with something small and fragile balanced on his paw. Like someone who had learned hardness first and tenderness as a second language, he did not speak fluently, but was trying to learn one halting syllable at a time, because a child needed him to be something he had never been before, and he refused to fail her even though he had no idea what he was doing. "Baby girl, that was just a nightmare. Nothing is going to hurt you here. You are safe. I promise you that. You promise you will not leave again like you left before." The pause that followed felt heavy, loaded with history Harper could not see but could feel pressing down through the floorboards like physical weight, like guilt given gravity, like regret turned solid enough to crack foundations and bend steel and make a large man's voice go small and uncertain. I am not going anywhere. Not anymore. Sleep now. Okay, Daddy. I love you. Love you too, kid. The Boots walked away. A door closed somewhere upstairs with the careful quiet of a man trying not to disturb a child. He had just settled into something resembling peace. Then nothing but the mechanical hum of the furnace and Harper's own heartbeat hammering against her ribs. She waited 2 hours before allowing herself to sleep. Even then her dreams were cold. They were always cold now. Had been cold since August. Since the gas station bathroom. Since the foam and the needle and the blue face that used to be her mother's face back when her mother was still a person, instead of a warning about what happened when the world stopped seeing you and you stopped seeing yourself. Over the next 6 days, Harper learned the house's rhythm the way a prisoner learns guard rotations. The man left every morning at exactly 6:15. Motorcycle engine roaring to life in the driveway, loud enough to rattle the basement windows in their frames and vibrate through Harper's bones where she lay curled behind the furnace pretending she did not exist. The sound was different from cars, deeper, angrier, the sound of controlled power, a machine built for speed and rebellion, and the open road ridden by someone who did not apologize for the noise he made in the world. He would be gone until late afternoon, sometimes later. The girl Rosie stayed home during the day. Homeschooled Harper guessed from the lack of morning routine sounds, no rush of cereal bowls and backpacks and school bus brakes squealing at the curb. Sometimes Harper heard her talking to herself upstairs, playing with toys, carrying on the one-sided conversations of an only child, creating friends from imagination because real ones were not available. Inventing voices and characters and entire worlds populated by people who existed only in the mind of an 8-year-old who spent too much time alone. Sometimes crying soft and muffled, the sound pressed into a pillow or a stuffed animal to contain it, like she was trying to hide the tears even from herself, because showing weakness felt dangerous even in the safety of her own room. Sometimes just silence, which somehow felt worse than the crying, because silence in a child that young meant thinking, and an 8-year-old should not have thoughts heavy enough to create that kind of quiet. Harper rationed water from the utility sink, drinking from cupped hands in the dead of night when the house above breathed with sleep. She survived 1 hour at a time because that was all she knew how to do anymore. 1 hour, then another, until days became a week and the basement became less like a hiding spot and more like the closest thing to home she had known since Jolene was still alive, enough to remember that her daughter existed between fixes and binges and the slow erasure of everything she had once been. Then came the screaming. 2:34 in the morning on her 7th night in the basement. Harper jolted awake to the sound of a child's terror ripping through the floorboards like claws through paper. Not the ordinary sounds of nightmares, not whimpers or small cries, or the restless tossing of a child who did not like the shapes the shadows made on her bedroom wall. This was different, raw, primal. The sound of someone drowning in their own head while their body thrashed on sheets soaked with sweat. No, no, the fire. Please, somebody help me. Do not let me burn. Please, the smoke. I cannot breathe. Uncle Dale, please do not. Please, the fire, the fire. The boots thundered across the floor above. Fast. Panicked, a door crashed open hard enough that Harper heard something fall from a shelf and shatter against the wall with the sound of glass becoming something sharp and dangerous. Rosie? Rosie, wake up, baby. It is just a dream. You are not burning. You are safe. Come on, sweetheart. Wake up for Daddy. Please. But the screaming did not stop. It clawed at something deep in Harper's chest, something she kept locked and buried and refused to examine because examining it meant feeling it, and feeling it meant remembering. A memory of her own mother thrashing in withdrawal on a motel bed with sheets stained by sweat and tears and other things Harper had learned not to look at too closely. Jolene begging for help. Harper was too young and too small to give screaming at demons. Only she could see, clawing at her own arms hard enough to draw blood in red lines that Harper would later clean with wet towels, while her mother slept the exhausted sleep of someone whose body had fought a war with itself and lost. Harper pressed her palms against her ears and squeezed her eyes shut and made herself small, made herself nothing. But she could not unhear it. The sound burrowed into her skull and lived there. An 8-year-old girl screaming about fire and smoke, and someone named Uncle Dale, who had done something terrible enough to create nightmares. This vivid, this consistent, this loaded with specific detail. Every night after that, the nightmares came, always around 2:30, as if Rosie's brain had set an alarm for its own torment. Always the same themes: fire, smoke, burning, cannot breathe. Uncle Dale. And every night the father would hold the girl until the screaming dissolved into whimpers, and the whimpers dissolved into silence, and the silence dissolved into the mechanical hum of the furnace. That was the only consistent sound in a house built on secrets and grief and the fragile hope that love could outrun trauma. Harper found herself listening for it, waiting, worrying about a child she had never seen, wondering what kind of experience could create nightmares this consistent, this loaded with detail, that sounded less like imagination and more like memory, replaying itself in an endless loop of horror no child should carry. During the days while the man was gone and Rosie talked to her imaginary friends upstairs, Harper explored the basement more carefully. She found old newspapers in a recycling bin near the stairs, the pages yellowed and brittle at the edges. She read about the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, territory disputes with rival gangs that left men hospitalized and others buried, federal investigations into racketeering that collapsed because nobody cooperated and everybody hired lawyers, and the code of silence held firm against every legal instrument the government could deploy. And buried in a 3-month-old edition of the Chicago Tribune, she found a small article in the Metro section, a human interest piece about a club member named Dominic Maddox, who had returned to Chicago after years in Colorado. Recently discovered he had a daughter he never knew about, learning to be a single father. The reporter wrote about him with careful distance, the kind of journalistic objectivity that barely concealed skepticism about whether a man who wore a death head on his back could ever learn to pack a proper school lunch. The pieces clicked together in Harper's mind. The leather. The patches on the jacket she glimpsed through the basement window hanging on a hook by the back door, the death head logo facing outward like a warning. The club business boxes. The military precision of the tool organization. The way the man's voice carried authority even when he was reading bedtime stories in a voice that strained against its own roughness, trying to find gentleness underneath. Harper was squatting in the house of a Hell's Angel they called Iron. She should run. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to climb back through that window and disappear into the city before those heavy boots came down the basement stairs. But every shelter in the city was full operating beyond capacity, turning people away at the door with apologies that meant nothing when the alternative was freezing. Every other squat she had found was either frozen solid or occupied by people more dangerous than bikers, people who looked at 14-year-old girls with eyes that calculated value in ways that had nothing to do with human worth. And something about Rosie's screams kept Harper frozen in place, unable to leave, unable to abandon a child whose terror she felt resonating in her own chest, like an echo of her own history. On the 8th night, Harper made a decision that would change everything. She found the teddy bear while scavenging through an alley behind a community center on Riverside Grove. Someone had left donation boxes outside for a charity drive that would collect canned goods and gently used clothing and never quite reach the people who actually needed it most. The bear was brown, missing one black button eye stitching, coming loose at the seams, where white stuffing threatened to escape like clouds from a torn sky. But it was soft, clean enough. The kind of thing a child might hold on to in the dark when nightmares came calling, and the grown-ups were too slow to arrive. Harper thought about Rosie's screams, about the fear in her voice when she called for help that came but never fast enough, about being 8 years old and terrified of fire and smoke, and a man named Uncle Dale who existed in dreams too detailed and too consistent to be anything but memory wearing the costume of nightmare. At 3 in the morning, while the house breathed with sleep, Harper crept upstairs for the first time. Her hands shook so badly she could barely grip the wooden handrail. Every creak of wood beneath her feet felt like an alarm sounding in the silence. Every shadow in the hallway looked like someone waiting to catch her to end the brief safety she had built in the darkness below. The house was different up here. Lived in, warm, filled with the small evidence of normal life she had almost forgotten existed. Photographs on the walls showed groups of men in leather vests, arms around each other's shoulders, faces hard but smiling. Brothers. A living room with a couch buried under motorcycle magazines, grease stains on the armrests, where large hands had rested after long days of working on engines. A kitchen with a child's drawing stuck to the refrigerator with motorcycle-shaped magnets. Stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. The word family written in crayon across the top letters, wobbling with the effort and hope of an 8-year-old hand. Harper found the door at the end of the hallway. Pink paint slightly chipped at the corners where small hands had pushed it open and closed 1,000 times. A handmade sign in crayon taped to the wood with strips of tape that were starting to peel. Rosie's room, no boys allowed except Daddy. She set the teddy bear gently against the door, centering it carefully so it would be the first thing Rosie saw when she opened the door in the morning. Then Harper turned to leave and froze. Rosie stood in the doorway of her room, materialized from shadows like something that belonged to the dark. She had opened the door without a sound, a trick that spoke of practice of nights spent listening for danger of a child who had learned to move silently through her own house because noise attracted attention, and attention was not always safe. 8 years old, small and pale, in unicorn pajamas washed so many times the colors had faded to gray. The horn on the unicorn print barely visible anymore, a magical creature slowly disappearing from the fabric the way magical things always disappeared when reality pressed too hard against them. Dark circles under eyes that carried more weight than any child's eyes should, staring at Harper with fear so pure it could stop a heart. Harper could not breathe, could not move. If this child screamed, everything was over. The man upstairs with the gun would not ask questions first. But Rosie did not scream. She looked at the teddy bear at her feet, looked at Harper, looked back at the bear. Her expression shifted through stages Harper could read because she had lived through each one herself. Fear first, then confusion, then something else entirely. Curiosity, recognition, the look of someone who knew loneliness well enough to identify it in another person's face. Is that for me? Barely a whisper. Careful, like she was afraid speaking too loud might break whatever fragile magic was happening between them. Harper nodded. Her own voice had abandoned her completely. Thank you. Rosie picked up the bear and hugged it to her chest with both arms, one small hand covering the missing eye, as if she could protect it from whatever had hurt it before. What is your name, Harper? The word came out barely louder than a breath. I am Rosie. Do you live in our basement? She should lie, should invent a story, should run. But something in Rosie's eyes, the same deep loneliness Harper carried in her own reflection, made her tell the truth. Yes. Rosie tilted her head, processing this with the flexible logic of a child who had not yet learned that some things were supposed to be impossible. Are you a ghost? I thought I heard someone downstairs sometimes, but Daddy said it was just the furnace. No, just homeless. The word hung between them, heavy and real, impossible to take back or pretend away. Rosie's expression softened in a way that made Harper's chest ache. My daddy says homeless people need help, that people forget about them, but they should not. He gets really mad when people are mean to homeless people downtown. She paused. Are you hungry? Harper's stomach answered with a growl loud enough to echo off the hallway walls. Wait here. The girl disappeared into her room and returned 30 seconds later with treasures clutched in both hands. A juice box with the bendy straw still attached. A sleeve of crackers slightly crushed but sealed. A granola bar. I'm not supposed to have snacks after bedtime, but you need them way more than me. Harper took them with hands that would not stop shaking. The crackers felt like something sacred in her palms. Thank you. You do not have to do this. I know, Rosie interrupted with the unshakable confidence of someone who had made up her mind. But I want to. Nobody should be hungry. She hugged her new bear tighter, covering that missing eye with her palm. Do not tell my daddy, okay? He is in a motorcycle club. The Hells Angels. They are really, really tough. He carries a gun. I will not tell anyone, I promise. Rosie smiled for the first time. Small, but real. The kind of smile that costs nothing to give and everything to receive when you have not seen one directed at you in 3 months. I like having a friend, even a secret ghost friend who is not really a ghost. She went back to bed, closing her door softly, leaving Harper standing in the dark hallway holding crackers and a juice box in the knowledge that she had just formed the most dangerous friendship of her entire life. They built a secret language over the days that followed. Every night after Iron's boots settled into the rhythm of sleep above, Rosie would leave food outside her bedroom door. Crackers, granola bars, half sandwiches wrapped in napkins with peanut butter spread absurdly thick because 8-year-olds do not understand portion control, and generosity does not come with a measuring cup. Apple slices in plastic bags sealed with careful attention. Once an entire slice of cold pizza that tasted like the most extraordinary thing Harper had ever eaten, the cheese congealed and the pepperoni leaving grease stains on her fingers that she licked clean because waste was something she could not afford. In return, Harper left small treasures from her daytime scavenging. A flower from Grant Park that had not quite died yet, purple petals still fighting November. A smooth stone from the river shoreline, gray and round and perfect for holding when you needed something solid in your hand when everything else felt uncertain. A comic book from a bus stop bench, pages worn, but readable, superheroes saving the world in colors that refuse to fade. Two broken children helping each other survive in silence, building something neither of them had words for. Learning that sometimes family is not about blood or last names or houses with fences. Sometimes family is crackers shared in the dark and teddy bears with missing eyes, and someone who sees you when the whole world has learned to look away. Harper learned things during those days that would reshape everything she understood about this house and the people in it. Learned that Rosie's mother had died 6 months ago in Denver. Car accident. Uncle Dale was driving. Mommy was trapped in the front seat. The car caught fire. Uncle Dale got out. Mommy did not. The words came out of Rosie flat and rehearsed, worn smooth by repetition, the way children speak about horrors they have described so many times the sharp edges have been rubbed away. Learned that Rosie's father, everyone called him Iron, though Rosie said his real name was Dominic, had only recently found out Rosie existed. The mother had kept her secret for 8 years because she did not want the motorcycle club life touching her daughter. But then she died and there was nobody else. No family willing to take in a dead woman's child. And Iron came to Denver and found a daughter he never knew. He had a child grieving a mother she had watched burn, while a man named Uncle Dale walked away from the wreck and disappeared into the Colorado night. The nightmares made terrible sense now. Not prophecy, but trauma. A little girl's brain replaying horror on an endless loop, stuck on the worst scene, the one where fire consumed everything and the person who was supposed to save you saved himself instead. Iron was trying to be a father. Harper heard evidence of this effort filtering through the floorboards every day. Heard him watching YouTube videos about how to braid hair, his rough voice repeating instructions to himself like a man studying for the most important exam of his life. Making lunches with too much peanut butter and not enough jelly because nobody had taught him the ratio. Reading bedtime stories in a voice that strained against its own roughness, trying to find the gentleness hiding underneath. And the effort itself was a kind of tenderness. She also learned that Iron's club brothers came by too often. Their voices carried through walls during late-night meetings after Rosie was in bed. Loud, angry, words that made Harper press closer to the basement wall to hear, even though she knew eavesdropping on Hell's Angels was probably the fastest route to a shallow grave in a place nobody would think to search. One night, a voice colder than the others cut through the conversation. Iron, you are compromised. The club cannot have compromised leadership. Either the girl goes or you do. Simple math. You threatening my daughter. Iron's voice dropped to something that made the air feel heavier. The tone of a man who had buried people before and was entirely willing to do it again. Because if you are threatening my daughter, we are going to have a very different conversation. One that ends with me burying every single one of you in Indiana cornfields, where nobody will find you until you are nothing but bones. Nobody is threatening anyone, just saying accidents happen, house fires, car crashes. Kids disappear all the time in Chicago. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a gun already fired. Then Iron's voice barely controlled. Get out of my house. The door slammed hard enough to shake the walls. Motorcycles roared away into the November night. Harper did not sleep. Neither did Rosie. Harper heard her crying softly upstairs until sunrise, the muffled sound of a child who understood more about danger than any 8-year-old should. November 18th, 4:47 in the afternoon. Harper had made her decision. She was leaving tonight. The tension in the house had become something you could feel pressing against your skin, suffocating and heavy. She recognized the warning signs from years of living near violence. The way Iron had started checking window locks obsessively every night. The gun that appeared on the kitchen counter each morning. The club members who drove past slowly at random hours, motorcycles idling watching. She was packing her backpack, a spare shirt with holes, the comic book from Rosie carefully folded, a photograph of Jolene she had salvaged from their old apartment before the landlord threw everything into a dumpster. Her mother smiling in a way Harper barely remembered before the drugs, before the darkness, when she had still been a person instead of a ghost. That is when she heard it. The furnace kicked on with its usual groan, but something rattled in the ductwork. Something metallic. Wrong. Harper dragged a wooden crate beneath the heating vent and climbed up. Reached inside. Her thin fingers fit easily into the metal opening. They closed around a stack of papers, thick textured like drawing paper. She pulled them out. Her heart stopped. Rosie's drawings, at least 20 of them hidden in the ductwork where no adult hand could reach. A hiding place designed by a child for secrets too important and too terrible to leave, where grown-ups might find them and dismiss them as imagination. But these were not the cheerful crayon pictures on the refrigerator upstairs, the stick figures and smiling suns. These were different, darker, horrifying in their specificity, maps of the house, every room labeled in shaky handwriting, every window numbered, every door marked, every exit circled in red crayon pressed so hard the paper had torn. And in the corner of each drawing, a date circled over and over in black marker until the paper had ripped clean through, leaving ragged holes where numbers should be. November 18th, today. Harper flipped through the pages with hands that would not stop shaking. Flames in orange and red and yellow consuming stick figure houses, the colors layered so thick the wax had cracked. Smoke drawn in thick black spirals covering entire pages. Stick figures running, falling, burning. And one drawing that turned her blood to ice. A man in a leather vest. The Hell's Angels patch visible, even in crayon. Pouring liquid from a container around the outside of a stick figure house. In an upstairs window, a small figure with yellow hair, arms raised. And above her, written in letters that grew bigger and more frantic across the page, Rosie. Rosie, 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 Rosie. These were not nightmares. These were warnings. Evidence. A child trying to leave clues for whoever might find them hiding them, where only a ghost in the basement would look. Then Harper smelled it, faint at first, almost hidden beneath the motor oil and leather that had become background noise over 2 weeks, but unmistakable once she recognized it. A smell that did not belong anywhere near a house where a child slept. Gasoline. Sharp. Chemical. Wrong. Seeping through the floorboards. Spreading. Pooling. Waiting. Harper dropped the drawings. They scattered across concrete like warnings arriving too late. She ran for the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. Her feet hit the main floor just as she heard it. The soft whoosh of ignition magnified by accelerant. The sound of gasoline meeting flame. The sound of murder dressed as accident. The second floor erupted into fire. Flames raced across the ceiling with impossible speed, feeding on trails of accelerant painted in deliberate patterns designed to spread fast and burn hot and kill everything in their path before help could arrive. Smoke poured down the stairwell in thick, suffocating clouds. Heat slammed into Harper like a solid wall, and somewhere above, cutting through the roar of consuming fire, Rosie started screaming. "Harper! Harper, help me! I cannot get out! The door will not open! Harper, please!" Calling for her, not her father, not 911, not God, her, the homeless girl in the basement, the secret friend who traded stones and flowers for crackers and juice boxes in the dark. Harper looked at the basement door behind her. 3 steps to the alley, to safety, to invisibility. She could disappear into Chicago and nobody would ever know she had been here. Nobody would blame her. Nobody would remember her name. She looked at the burning staircase where an 8-year-old was screaming her name like a prayer. And Harper made the choice that would change everything. She covered her face with her jacket and ran straight into the fire. The staircase was a tunnel of flame. Harper took the steps 2 at a time, jacket pressed against her mouth and nose, breathing through fabric that smelled like 3 months of homelessness in her own sharp sweat. Her eyes streamed tears that evaporated in heat so intense it felt like standing inside the sun. Wallpaper peeled away in burning strips falling like toxic snow. Embers caught on her clothes and burned through to skin. The smoke was thick and black and suffocating, filling her lungs with poison, making her dizzy and confused, making her thoughts scatter like startled birds losing formation. Harper felt it happening, felt her head going light. "Rosie, where are you?" "My room, the door. I cannot open it." "Harper, please." Left. Harper crashed through smoke with arms outstretched, burned hands finding walls hot enough to blister skin on contact. The upstairs hallway was an inferno. Flames crawled across the ceiling, feeding on accelerant that made them burn hotter and faster than any natural fire should. She found the door, pink paint bubbling, handle searing her palm when she grabbed it. She held on because pain was temporary and Rosie dying was permanent. Locked. Locked from the outside. Someone had locked an 8-year-old girl in her room and set the house on fire. Harper slammed her shoulder into the door. Once, twice, 3 times. Behind her, part of the ceiling collapsed, cutting off the route to the stairs. She had seconds. She kicked the door with everything she had. All the anger of 3 months homeless. All the grief of watching her mother die while the world kept moving outside like nothing had happened. All the fury of being invisible in a world that erased girls like her. The frame splintered. One more kick and the door burst inward. Rosie was on the floor by her window, unconscious, not breathing. The unicorn pajamas covered in soot, the faded colors invisible now under layers of carbon and ash. 4 minutes since the first scream. 4 minutes of brain-killing, life-stealing time. Harper scooped the girl up, so light it terrified her, like holding something precious and breakable that the world had decided to destroy. The hallway was engulfed. Stairs collapsed. Harper ran to the window, wrapped her fist in singed fabric, and punched through glass. Cold air rushed in, feeding the fire behind her. Second story, 15 feet down onto frozen ground. She could survive the fall, probably. But Rosie in her arms, unconscious and fragile, that was different mathematics entirely. Harper climbed onto the windowsill, held Rosie tight against her chest. One arm under the girl's knees, the other cradling her head. The way you hold something when you are determined to protect it with your own body and your own willingness to break. And jumped. The impact drove the air from her lungs in an explosion of pain that turned vision white. Her ankle twisted, wrong ligaments stretching past their limit bones, grinding together. But she rolled, protecting Rosie with her own body, taking the impact on shoulder and back and hip, and came to rest on the front lawn, gasping and coughing and alive. Rosie was not breathing. Harper laid her flat on frozen grass, blades crunching beneath the girl's weight. Her hands shook so badly she could barely control them. But she had seen CPR demonstrated once at a school assembly years ago when the Chicago Fire Department came to teach children how to save lives. And Harper had paid attention because even then some part of her had understood that survival meant knowing how to bring people back from the edge. She tilted Rosie's head back, checked for obstructions with fingers that left bloody prints on the girl's chin, started chest compressions on a rib cage so small her hands seemed enormous by comparison. 30 compressions, counting in her head, feeling ribs flex under her palms. "Come on, Rosie. Come on. Do not leave. Please do not leave me. Not after you saw me when nobody else did." 2 rescue breaths. Tilt head, pinch nose, seal lips, breathe, watch for chest rise. Nothing. 30 more compressions. Blood from Harper's burned hands left prints on the unicorn pajamas. Neighbors were emerging from houses, phones, raised filming, everything. Sirens in the distance growing closer but not close enough. "Please, I did not jump through fire to watch you die on frozen grass. I did not choose you over invisibility to lose you now. Breathe. Just breathe." 2 more breaths. 30 more compressions. Harder, faster, driven by desperation and love, and the absolute refusal to accept that the world would take this child. Then Rosie coughed. Water and bile erupted from her mouth. Her body convulsed as lungs remembered their purpose. Harper turned her on her side, supporting her head, watching the girl's chest heave with the effort of drawing clean, cold air into damaged lungs. Eyes opened, unfocused, terrified, but open, alive. Harper, raw, damaged from smoke and screaming. But her voice, I am here. You are okay. My daddy. We will find him. Just keep breathing. Then came the sound. Motorcycles, not a few, hundreds. The thunder of engines converging from every direction like a steel stampede. The ground vibrated. The crowd of neighbors scattered as bikes poured onto the street. 10, 20, 50. More coming. A wall of leather and chrome and barely contained fury. A single motorcycle cut through. Bigger, louder. The rider was massive, 6'4" of leather and muscle and rage that distorted the air around him. He pulled off his helmet, and Harper recognized him from the photographs inside the burning house. Iron. Dominic Maddox, Rosie's father. His eyes found Rosie first. Something broke in his face. Fear so raw it looked like physical pain. Then his eyes found Harper, a 14-year-old stranger holding his daughter on frozen grass. His hand moved to his waistband, to the gun. Who the hell are you and why were you in my house? 1,000 bikers closed in, a circle of leather and judgment. Harper was trapped, surrounded, holding the only thing keeping her alive. I was in your basement. I am homeless. I was looking for somewhere warm. Iron's jaw clenched. For how long? 2 weeks. One of the bikers stepped forward. Bishop, older, gray beard streaked with white. Iron's mentor, the man who had taught him everything about leading a chapter. He showed Iron his phone. The video of Harper jumping from the window, doing CPR, already going viral, view count climbing by the thousands every second. Iron watched it twice. Then another biker called out from near the burning structure. Iron, fire was set. I can smell the accelerant from here. Someone tried to kill your kid. Did you see anyone? Iron asked Harper. I saw someone running from the back door when it started, wearing a leather vest. Your patch. Silence. Absolute and total except for burning wood and distant sirens. You are saying one of my brothers tried to burn my daughter alive. Not a question. A death sentence looking for a name. They took Harper to the clubhouse on the outskirts of Chicago, chain link fence and razor wire, 40 bikers staring at her in a room that smelled like cigarette smoke and motor oil and barely contained violence. Rosie was at Northwestern Memorial Hospital with half a dozen club members guarding her room. The doctors said she would survive. Iron stood before Harper, arms crossed. Start from the beginning, everything. She told the truth. All of it. The cold that drove her in, the nightmares she heard through the floor, the teddy bear, the secret friendship built on crackers and kindness, the drawings hidden in the ductwork, the maps and the fire illustrations, and today's date circled until the paper tore, the gasoline seeping through floorboards, the choice to run upward into fire instead of outward into safety. When she finished, Viper spoke from the back of the room. Road captain, mid-40s, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Textbook manipulation, long con. She gets into the house, befriends the kid, stages the fireplace hero. Next thing you know, she is asking for money club protection. Classic grift. The video does not lie, Bishop countered. Those burns are real. Burns are easy to fake, self-inflicted. The club was dividing. Harper could see fracture lines forming in real time. Trust and suspicion pulling brotherhood apart along seams nobody had noticed until pressure tested them. There is another explanation, Harper said. Her voice cut through the argument with a clarity that surprised even her. My mother's name was Jolene. She left Chicago 16 years ago. Pregnant. The word detonated in the room. Bishop went rigid. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through photographs with fingers that were not quite steady, and turned the screen toward Harper. A photograph, Jolene. Younger. Healthier. Smiling in a way Harper barely recognized. Standing next to a younger version of Iron on a motorcycle, her mother's arms wrapped around his waist, her head tilted against his shoulder. Where did you get that? Harper whispered. Iron took the phone, color drained from his face. Jolene left 16 years ago, said she was pregnant, did not want club life for her kid. I gave her money, told her to call if she needed anything. She never did. Pregnant, Bishop said carefully. too carefully. With your kid Iron. Iron looked at Harper, really looked, eyes moving across her face, the shape of her nose, the line of her jaw, doing mathematics that required no calculator. How old are you? 14. When is your birthday of March 7th? Iron closed his eyes. Something behind them broke in a way that would take a long time to repair. March 7th, Jolene called me in June 15 years ago. Said she had the baby. A girl. I offered money support, whatever she needed. She refused. Said she did not want the club touching her daughter. I respected that. Sent money through a third party for years until about 4 years ago when it started coming back. Thought she had gotten stable. She did not get stable. Harper's voice was bitter. Angry in a way she had not let herself be angry in months, because anger required energy, and energy required food and hope and things she did not have. She got worse. Pills then needles. We lived in motels when we were lucky, cars when we were not. She would disappear for days, and I learned to steal food and lie to social workers and be invisible so they would not put me in foster care, where things were sometimes worse than the streets. The clubhouse went silent, every man processing the impossible. Their president had a 14-year-old daughter who had been homeless for 3 months 20 miles from where he slept every night. A daughter who had saved his other daughter's life. A biker burst through the door, phone in hand. Boss, video hit 10 million. National news. They are calling her a guardian angel. The DNA test was arranged immediately, but the room still had to address who had tried to murder an 8-year-old girl. Security footage from a convenience store showed a figure in a Hells Angels vest approaching Iron's house at 4:32 that afternoon carrying a container. Road Captain Patch, Bishop said, zooming the image. Only 12 brothers have that designation. The investigation moved fast. Phone records, alibis, camera footage from every angle the brothers could find. The circle tightened around Viper. A 2-hour gap in his alibi, 4 to 6, exactly when the fire was set. They brought him back to the clubhouse. He smiled his empty smile. Misunderstanding, brother. I went for a ride. In 8-degree weather, without telling anyone. During the exact window, someone was pouring gasoline around my house. Show us your phone, Iron said. I have rights. Club bylaws. Club bylaws suspend protections when a brother's family is threatened. Show the phone. Viper's hand moved toward his waistband. 3 bikers drew weapons faster than Harper could blink. The room erupted. Harper dove behind a table as Viper pulled his gun, aimed at Harper. This kid ruins everything. The smooth facade was gone. Raw desperation underneath. Iron was supposed to be broken after the fire. Stepped down from president. I was supposed to take over, lead this club the way it should be led. You tried to kill my daughter. It was supposed to be controlled. Carry you in a stepping down, but the accelerant spread too fast, and this homeless rat had to play hero. The standoff stretched. 40 armed men, 1 traitor with a gun pointed at a teenager's head. Harper's heart hammered hard enough to feel in her teeth. Then Bishop spoke, and the ground shifted beneath everyone. Put the gun down, Viper. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. The calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment. We can still fix this, all of this. Something in Bishop's tone made Harper's blood go cold. She looked at the old man and saw calculation moving behind his eyes. Not shock or anger. Control. The expression of a man managing a situation rather than reacting to one. Bishop held up his phone. A photograph. Rosie's hospital room. Rosie asleep. Oxygen mask on her face. I have a man at the hospital right now, standing over your daughter with a syringe full of the same thing that killed junkies on every corner of this city. If Viper does not walk out of here free and clear, Rosie gets a hot dose straight into her IV. Iron's face turned the color of ash. Bishop, not you. I raised you, Dominic, taught you everything about this life, made you president when you were too young for the responsibility. And you repaid me by getting soft. Daughters over duty, sentiment over strength. This club does not have room for weakness. You have 30 seconds to decide, Bishop continued. Viper walks or your daughter dies. The clock on the wall ticked. 29, 28. Harper's mind was racing. Her eyes were locked on Bishop's phone screen, on the photograph of Rosie in her hospital bed. Something was wrong with the image. Her brain, the same brain that had survived 3 months by noticing details others overlooked, was screaming at her to look harder, look closer, find the thing that did not fit. 24, 23. Wait, Harper's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Bishop is lying. Silence. Rosie is wearing green pajamas in the real hospital. Standard pediatric issue. They changed her out of her burned clothes when she was admitted. I saw the nurses do it before the ambulance left. The ones in that photo are blue, not even the unicorn pajamas from home. Completely different color. That photo was not taken tonight. Every eye shifted to Bishop's phone. The IV bag in that photo shows a saline label. Clear bag, blue writing. But the news crew that filmed Rosie's room 40 minutes ago, the footage that has been playing on every television in this room, showed her on a glucose drip for her blood sugar. Yellow label. Different IV stand. Different everything. That photo was taken hours ago when Bishop visited the hospital as the concerned uncle. Nobody is standing over Rosie right now. Nobody has a syringe. He is bluffing. Iron was already dialing hospital security. His fingers shook. This is Dominic Maddox. Check my daughter's room. Right now, do not announce yourself. Just look inside and tell me exactly who is in there. 15 seconds of silence that felt like 15 years. 2 guards at the door, 2 nurses doing vitals. No visitors, nobody else for 45 minutes. Bishop's mask cracked. Calculation collapsing under the weight of being undone by a 14-year-old girl who noticed pajama colors and IV labels when she was supposed to be too terrified to notice anything. The clubhouse door crashed inward. 50 more bikers poured through the ones who had been stationed outside, supposedly on perimeter duty, but actually listening through cracked windows and open vents. They had heard every word, every confession. Viper's gun wavered at Harper's head. I will still kill her. Harper dropped, let her legs collapse completely, using her smaller size and gravity to slip down through Viper's grip like water through open fingers. The gun fired. Sound exploded in the enclosed space. The bullet punched through ceiling tiles. Iron moved faster than Harper had ever seen a human being move. 2 explosive strides. Disarmed Viper with brutal efficiency. Face down on concrete in 3 seconds. Others swarmed Bishop before he could draw. Over in less than 10 seconds. How many? Iron's voice was barely recognizable as human. 5 total. Viper gasped through the pain of his arm twisted at an angle arms were not designed to reach. Me, Bishop, 3 others. Planned for months. 5 traitors in 1,000. 995 who stayed loyal. Federal agents arrived within the hour. Arrests. Charges of conspiracy, arson, attempted murder. The 3 remaining conspirators identified through phone records and security footage within 24 hours. The DNA results came back 2 days later. Plain manila envelope. Iron opened it at the kitchen table of a temporary apartment while Harper sat across from him and Rosie slept upstairs, released from the hospital. 99.98% probability of paternity. Iron read the words twice, then looked at Harper with tears running down his face. Actual tears on the face of a man whose entire reputation was built on being harder than the metal they named him for. You are my daughter. I have 2 daughters. You could not have known, Harper said softly. Jolene made sure of that. She was protecting you. She was trying to. Iron reached across the table and took Harper's burned, bandaged hands in his own scarred ones. I do not know how to be a father to a teenager. I barely know how to handle an 8-year-old, but I am going to learn. We will figure this out. Harper looked at his hands holding hers, the hands of a stranger who shared her blood. After 3 months of relying on absolutely no one, the idea of leaning on another person felt foreign and frightening, like stepping onto ice without knowing if it was thick enough to hold. Part of her wanted to trust this man who was looking at her with tears and recognition, and the desperate hope that she would let him try to be what he had never been. But another part of her, the part that had kept her alive on the streets, the part that remembered every person who had promised to stay and then left, that part whispered that fathers were just people and people disappeared. I have been taking care of myself for a long time, she said. I do not know how to let someone else do it. I do not know how to stop watching exits and counting steps to the nearest door. I do not know how to sleep without one eye open. Then we learned together. Both of us. I learned how to be a father. You learn how to let someone be one. The word family hovered between them. The thing Harper had been missing for 3 months. For years before that, when Jolene had been more ghost than parent. Then her phone buzzed. The cracked device she had shoplifted months ago. A message from an unknown number. Viper and Bishop were just pawns. I killed your mother. I gave Jolene the hot dose that stopped her heart. I have been watching you your whole life, little niece. You have her eyes. We will meet soon. The traitors were in custody. The conspiracy dismantled. The club healing. But the real enemy was still out there. Invisible. Patient. Calling herself family. And she knew things about Harper and Jolene that no stranger could know. The safe house sat 40 miles outside Chicago, hidden behind 60 acres of Indiana farmland. 3 security fences, 12 cameras, motion sensors on every approach road, 20 bikers on site at all times rotating in 12-hour shifts. Harper was its prisoner. Nobody locked her door. Nobody told her she could not leave. But the effect was the same. The walls closed in a little more each day, and the messages kept coming. 7 in a single day, always from untraceable numbers, always containing details that made Harper's skin crawl with the knowledge that whoever was sending them had been close enough for long enough to know things only family would know. A photograph of Harper at age 7, gap-toothed and grinning, standing next to Jolene at Navy Pier. Harper barely remembered that day, thought all photos had been lost when they fled their apartment 3 years ago. You have her eyes. Jolene took you to the pier every summer before the drugs got louder than everything else. I was there too, watching from the crowd. You never saw me. Nobody ever sees me. Another message, a photograph of Harper sleeping behind the furnace in the basement, taken through the window she had broken to get in. Timestamped 3 days before the fire. I knew you were in that house before Viper did, before Bishop did, before anyone. I have been watching you longer than they have been planning. Longer than you have been alive, little niece. Harper deleted each message with hands that no longer shook. You could not live in fear forever. Eventually your body ran out of adrenaline, and all that remained was cold certainty that something was coming, and you would face it when it arrived, because that was what surviving meant. On the 14th morning, Harper stood on the porch with Iron, both holding coffee, black, learning to drink the same way, learning to stand in comfortable silence the same way. Another one, Iron asked. 9th today, photo of Jolene's grave. Fresh flowers, someone visited this morning. FBI is working the routing, tracing patterns. They will not find anything. She has been planning for years, not weeks. This is someone patient. Someone obsessed. Silence. Indiana fields stretched flat and brown around them, dormant under November sky that looked like it had been painted in shades of pewter and ash. We cannot stay here forever, Harper said. Rosie needs school. You need the club. I need to figure out what my life is now. Hiding is not living. It is just existing, and I know the difference. What are you suggesting? That we stop waiting for her to come to us? That I make myself visible in a way she cannot resist, that we draw her out? Absolutely not. You are 14. I am 14 and I saved your daughter from a burning house. I am 14 and I caught 2 traitors by noticing pajama colors and IV labels. I survived 3 months on streets that kill grown men with decades of experience in it being cold and hungry and alone. I am not helpless, and the ghost knows it. That is exactly why she targets me specifically. Iron stared at his daughter, protective instinct warring with the knowledge that she was right, that waiting was prolonging the inevitable, that the ghost would come regardless, and it was better to choose the time and place than to let the enemy choose for them. 48 hours. We plan every detail, every contingency. And the absolute second I think you are in real danger, I pull you out. Understood. They spent 2 days planning Grant Park, open space, multiple sight lines, easy for bikers to position themselves in civilian clothes. Saturday afternoon, maximum crowd. On Friday morning, Harper posted to social media for the first time since the video, a photograph of Chicago's skyline at sunset. 2 weeks in hiding is long enough. Coming home tomorrow. Grant Park 2 in the afternoon. Time to stop being afraid. Time to be visible. For all the invisible kids out there, this one is for you. 50,000 likes in the first hour. National news coverage by afternoon. The narrative was perfect. And somewhere Harper knew the ghost was watching. Saturday came cold and clear. Harper wore the prospect vest openly. 30 bikers positioned throughout Grant Park in civilian clothes forming a perimeter that looked like nothing more than scattered groups of men enjoying a winter afternoon. At 2 o'clock, Harper walked through crowds of families and tourists, hyper aware of every face, every person who lingered a second too long. That is when she saw the woman. Not in the park itself, but in the reflection of a store window across the street. Mid-30s, dark hair like Jolene's. Same bone structure visible even at distance. Watching from a coffee shop entrance with the patience of someone who had been standing still for a very long time and could continue indefinitely. The woman smiled, mouthed 2 words Harper could read in the reflection. "Hi, niece." Harper's blood froze solid. Then her phone buzzed. "Nice try, but did you really think I would walk into your obvious trap? I am not here for you, Harper. Check your security cameras at the safe house. Check Rosie's room." Harper opened the security app with numb fingers. Living room clear, kitchen clear, Rosie's room empty, bed made, window open. On the pillow, a note in black marker. "Trade you for her. Come alone to the address below, 1 hour." The world tilted. She ran to Iron. No more subtlety, no more careful plans. "She has Rosie." Iron's face went the color of paper as Harper showed him the empty room on the security feed. "That is impossible. We have 20 men at that location, 3 fences, cameras everywhere. She has been planning this for years. She knew our schedule, knew the shift change at 2, when the afternoon crew replaces the morning crew, knew there would be a 90-second gap when the camera system cycled during handover. She has been watching the safe house the same way she watched the basement, the same way she watched everything. She is more patient than anyone we have been planning against." Harper was already moving toward the truck. The woman across the street had vanished into the Chicago crowd. A distraction, a decoy, drawing every biker to Grant Park while the real operation happened 40 miles away in Indiana during the exact window when security was weakest. Iron caught up to her. "Full force, surround the location. She will see you coming and kill Rosie before you get close. She did not spend years planning this to be stopped by numbers and noise." Harper pulled free. "She wants me, not you, not the club." Iron looked at his daughter, 14 years old, carrying weight that would buckle most adults. 50 bikers 3 blocks out. Wire. We listen to every word. The second you are in danger, we breach. His voice cracked in a way she had not heard before, and the sound of it broke something open in her chest that she had been keeping sealed since the day she learned that people who loved you could also be the people who left you. "If I lose both my daughters today, I will not survive it. You will not lose us." The warehouse district looked like despair given architectural form. Abandoned buildings with windows like empty eye sockets. Graffiti covering brick in layers of forgotten names. Empty lots filled with rusted machinery and the corpses of industries that died decades ago. The kind of place where people disappeared and nobody asked because asking meant caring about people the city had decided were not worth the cost of caring. Harper walked alone down the center of the street. The wire under her vest transmitted her heartbeat to Iron and 50 brothers 3 blocks away. Close enough to respond, far enough to be invisible to someone watching from the warehouse windows above. The warehouse was an old textile factory, 5 stories of red brick and shattered windows. The front door hung open, creaking in wind that smelled like winter and rust and endings. Harper stepped inside. Darkness. "I am here. I came alone. Let Rosie go." Footsteps from above. A woman's voice. Calm, controlled, carrying the patience that came from years of rehearsing this moment until it felt as natural as breathing. "Come upstairs. 3rd floor. And Harper, I have a syringe pressed against Rosie's neck. Same compound I gave your mother." One push, and she is gone in 90 seconds. Harper climbed stairs that creaked loudly enough for Iron to track her progress through the wire. The third floor opened into a vast, empty space where machinery had once hummed with productivity and purpose. Windows on every side provided sightlines in all directions. Perfect defensive position. In the center, Rosie sat in a metal chair, hands zip-tied behind her back, duct tape across her mouth, eyes red from crying but alive, conscious, terrified. When she saw Harper, she tried to scream through the tape, tried to warn her, or beg for help, or say the name of the person who had saved her once and was walking into danger to try again. Standing behind Rosie, one hand on the child's shoulder and the other holding a syringe pressed against her neck, was a woman whose face Harper's brain recognized through genetics alone. Mid-30s, dark hair like Jolene's, same cheekbones, same bone structure, family resemblance that could not be forged. "Hello, Harper." The woman's voice was almost gentle. "I am Marlene, your mother's sister, your aunt, and I have been watching over you for a very long time." "Why?" The word came out raw and broken. "What do you want?" "Justice. Your mother abandoned our family for a biker, got pregnant, ran away, chose his world over her own blood. Our parents died waiting for her to come home, died hoping she would get clean and call and walk through the door and be their daughter again. She never did. And when she finally tried to reach out 3 months ago, tried to reconnect after 16 years of silence, I made sure she could not. You killed her. I ended her suffering. She was already dying. The drugs had destroyed everything she used to be. I made it faster, cleaner, and I made sure she would never lead Iron to you. Never drag you into this world the way she let herself be dragged. You wanted to protect me," Harper said, her voice rising despite every effort at control, "by killing my mother, by trying to kill Rosie, by terrorizing us for weeks. I wanted Iron to suffer." Marlene's grip tightened on the syringe. "The way my parents suffered. The way I suffered being the responsible one. The forgotten daughter. The one who stayed and did everything right while everyone worried about the addict who left. Do you know what that is like, Harper? To do everything right and get nothing, to be invisible, because the person who abandoned you is more interesting than the person who stayed." The words hit Harper in a place she did not expect. A place that recognized Marlene's pain because it was her own pain wearing a different face. The invisible daughter, the forgotten one, the girl who survived by being overlooked while the world poured its attention onto someone else. "But then you saved Rosie," Marlene continued, "became a hero, got accepted into the club, became everything Jolene was supposed to be. And I realized killing you would be too easy, too quick. I needed you to understand first. Needed you to see what this life costs. What being visible costs when you are someone people can reach and hurt. So you took Rosie. I took Rosie to give you a choice. The same choice Jolene had. Blood family or the club. Your aunt connected to you by genetics and shared loss. Or the found family. The little girl you saved. The father you barely know. The brotherhood built on violence." Marlene's voice went sharp. "Choose. I let one of you walk out. Just one." Harper looked at Rosie, 8 years old, crying silently behind tape, innocent in every way that mattered. And Harper understood what Marlene was really offering. A test. A way to prove Harper was just like Jolene, that she would choose Iron's world over blood. A way to justify every murder and every moment of terror. The wire transmitted everything. Iron was hearing it. 50 bikers moving into position, but a syringe needed only 1 second. Harper took a step forward, hands visible, non-threatening. There is a third choice. There is no third choice. There is always a third choice. Another step. You survived after Jolene left. Took care of your parents alone. Learned to be invisible, to be forgotten, to be the responsible one, while everyone worried about your sister. I know what that feels like, Marlene. I was invisible for 3 months. I know how it changes you. How it makes anger feel like purpose when it is really just pain looking for a target. Marlene's expression flickered. A crack in armor forged over 16 years of grief. Do not try to analyze me. I am not analyzing you. I am telling you I understand. Harper was closer now, close enough to see the tears Marlene was fighting to hold back. You loved Jolene, so did I. She was not perfect. She was an addict who made terrible choices and hurt everyone who cared about her. But she was also the person who held me when I was scared, who taught me to be invisible so I would survive when she could not take care of me, who tried even when she was failing to be something better than what the drugs made her. She abandoned us. The word broke in Marlene's mouth like something that had been held too long. She was sick. There is a difference. Harper softened her voice. And you are sick too, Marlene. Not with drugs. With grief and anger and loneliness so deep you cannot find where it ends and you begin. You have been invisible so long you forgot how to be anything else. So you made yourself into a ghost, into something terrifying. Because at least villains are seen. At least villains matter to someone, even if it is only the people trying to stop them. Shut up. But Marlene's hand was shaking, the syringe trembling against Rosie's neck. You called me niece at first, but later you called me sister. Not niece, sister, because that is what you wanted. Not revenge, family. Someone who understood what losing Jolene felt like. Someone who saw you, really saw you, not as the responsible daughter or the sister who stayed, just as a person who has been hurting so long, she forgot what it feels like to not hurt. Tears were running down Marlene's face now, the mask cracking. 16 years of carefully maintained rage breaking apart under the weight of finally being seen by someone who understood because she had been invisible too and knew what the loneliness tasted like. Harper extended her hand, slowly, the way you approach something wounded that can still cause damage. I see you, Marlene. I see you hurting. I see you angry. I see you grieving for a sister who died years before the overdose took her body. And I am sorry. I am sorry Jolene left you. I am sorry you had to carry everything alone. I am sorry our family failed you so badly that murder seemed like the only answer left. The warehouse went silent. Just Marlene's ragged breathing and Rosie's muffled crying and Harper's heartbeat hammering in her throat. You can kill us both, but it will not bring Jolene back, will not stop the pain, will not make you visible the way you need to be visible. It will just make you someone else erased by grief, another invisible person the world forgets. Harper was close enough to touch Marlene now, close enough to see individual tears tracking through exhaustion. Or you can put down the syringe. Let Rosie go, and I promise you on Jolene's memory, I will remember her with you. I will mourn her with you. We are both her daughters in the ways that matter. We both lost her. We both have to figure out how to survive that loss without becoming monsters. The syringe pressed harder against Rosie's neck for one terrible second, hard enough to dimple skin, hard enough that Harper could see the exact point where the needle would enter if Marlene's finger moved even a fraction. Then Marlene's hand dropped. The syringe clattered to the floor. Amber liquid spilled across concrete, catching afternoon light through broken windows. Marlene sank to her knees, sobbing, not crying, sobbing. The kind that comes from a place so deep you did not know it existed until it erupts. 16 years of pressure releasing in sounds that barely seemed human. The sound of someone finally being allowed to break after holding herself together so long, she had forgotten she was made of breakable things. Harper moved fast, ripped tape from Rosie's mouth, cut zip ties with the pocket knife Iron had given her. Rosie threw her arms around Harper's neck and held on with the desperate strength of someone who has learned that the world is dangerous, but that some people in it will come for you no matter what. It is okay, little sister. You are safe. I have got you. Bikers stormed in 30 seconds later. 50 men through every entrance. Iron reached them first. Dropped to his knees, arms around both daughters. Are you hurt? We are okay, Dad. The first time she called him that. The word felt strange, foreign, but right. Like finding a piece of herself she did not know was missing until it clicked into place. Iron looked at Marlene being restrained. His face carried emotions too complicated and contradictory to name. Do not hurt her, Harper said. He turned. She is family. She is sick and alone. She needs help, not prison. She needs someone to see her the way Rosie saw me when I was invisible in your basement. You have a bigger heart than anyone I have ever known. I learned from watching you with Rosie. Family is worth saving, even when they are broken, especially when they are broken. Marlene was taken away in an ambulance. Not a police car. Psychiatric evaluation. The courts would eventually find her unfit to stand trial, recognizing that decades of untreated grief and isolation had broken something fundamental in the mechanism that separates justice from murder in a person's mind. She would spend time in a treatment facility, not a prison, getting the help she should have gotten 16 years ago when her sister left and her parents started dying of heartbreak, and nobody noticed that the daughter who stayed was disappearing just as surely as the daughter who left, just more quietly, just more completely, until there was nothing left but a ghost who did not even know she had become one. Months passed, winter surrendered to early spring. Chicago thawing under March sun that felt like forgiveness after a long sentence served in cold and darkness, and the constant low hum of fear. Harper stood in the parking lot of the Riverside Grove Community Center on a morning unseasonably warm for the season, watching 20 homeless kids between the ages of 8 and 16 circle around a disassembled motorcycle. The bike was old, a 1995 Harley Sportster donated by one of Iron's brothers. Simple and reliable and perfect for learning, which was the whole point. Not the motorcycle itself, but what the act of taking it apart and putting it back together taught you about yourself and the possibility that things that looked destroyed could still be made to run. Harper was 15 now. Her birthday had come with a celebration that still felt like something happening to someone else, a dream she had not yet accepted as her waking life. Cake and candles. A house full of bikers who had become uncles over the months, gruff men who showed tenderness through action rather than words. 3 bedrooms, so both daughters had their own space. A refrigerator that was always full, heat that always worked. People who asked how her day had been and actually listened to the answer. Okay, everyone. Harper's voice carried across the parking lot with a clarity and confidence it had not possessed 6 months ago, when the only voice she used was a whisper designed to avoid detection. This is a 1995 Harley Sportster, basically a dinosaur in motorcycle terms. But it is simple and reliable and perfect for what we are doing today. We are going to take apart the engine, not because you need to know how to fix motorcycles, because I want to teach you something more important than mechanics. A girl named Sadie raised her hand, 13 years old, hollow eyes that Harper recognized from her own mirror 6 months ago. The eyes of someone who has been invisible so long she has started to forget she has a face. What is that? That broken things can be fixed. That just because something looks destroyed does not mean it is worthless. That with the right tools and the right patience, you can take something people have given up on and make it run again. Make it matter. Make it visible. She caught Iron's eye where he stood in the back, watching present. Beside him, Rosie was helping the younger children hold wrenches, chattering about motorcycles with the easy confidence of a child who had learned that the world, while dangerous, also contained people who would jump through second-story windows to save you. The months had been difficult and strange, and sometimes wonderful in ways that caught Harper off guard. Catching up on school through online classes. Therapy was someone who understood trauma and homelessness and the particular challenge of learning to trust people after 3 months of trusting no one. Moving into a house where someone always asked if she was hungry, where doors locked from the inside instead of the outside, where nightmares were met with comfort instead of silence. She visited Marlene once a month. The visits were hard, awkward, painful in the way healing always hurts before it helps. Sitting across from each other in a facility visiting room, 2 women connected by a dead woman's memory, trying to talk about Jolene without the conversation collapsing into grief or anger, or the terrible silence of things that could never be undone, but necessary. Marlene was getting better, slowly, learning to talk about her sister without rage consuming everything else, learning to grieve properly instead of turning grief into weapons and plans. The ghost was gone. In her place was just a woman named Marlene who had loved her sister too much and hurt too deeply and needed someone to see her pain before it burned through everything she was and left nothing. When class ended, most of the kids drifted away toward whatever waited for them, but Sadie lingered. Harper, can I ask you something? Of course. The video of you saving that little girl from the fire, was it as scary as it looked? Harper thought about lying, about constructing a braver version of herself, but these kids deserved honesty. They lived in a world that lied to them constantly, that told them they were invisible, that told them they did not matter. The last thing they needed was another person pretending. It was terrifying. I thought I was going to die. I thought she was going to die. For a few minutes on that frozen lawn, I did not know if anything I was doing would be enough to bring her back. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. Because being invisible is safe. But being visible is how you save people. How you stop being the person things happen to and start being the person who makes things happen. You are here. You came to this class. You ask questions. You are already visible. Already braver than you think. Sadie nodded slowly, then quietly. Thank you for seeing us. After class, Harper and Iron and Rosie drove to the cemetery. They visited on the 7th of every month. March 7th was Harper's birthday, and also the day they had designated for remembering Jolene, because the two events were connected by the simple fact that Jolene had given Harper life, and that gift was worth honoring, even when the giver had spent years trying to erase herself. Jolene's grave was simple, small headstone, fresh flowers always present. Harper brought daisies, Jolene's favorite according to Marlene. One of the small shared memories they were building during those monthly visits, constructing a portrait of a woman neither of them had fully known. Harper knelt beside the stone. Rosie knelt beside her, adding flowers with the serious concentration of a child who understood death better than most adults. Hey, Mom. Harper's voice was soft, the voice you use when talking to someone who cannot answer but you hope can hear. It is March 7th, my birthday, 15. I found Dad, found Rosie, found a family I did not know I needed, teaching homeless kids how to fix motorcycles at the community center, living in a house with heat and food and people who care whether I come home at night. I am visible, Mom, really visible. She touched the headstone, cold marble warming under her palm. Marlene is doing better. She asks about you, what you were like before. I tell her stories, the good ones, the pancakes we burned and laughed about until we cried. The time you braided my hair crooked, and I told everyone you were the best hairdresser in Chicago. It helps both of us. We are learning to be family through you. Rosie added softly, we miss you, Aunt Jolene. I did not know you, but Harper talks about you a lot. You sound brave and kind. Thank you for keeping Harper safe until she could find us. They sat in silence for a while, then Harper stood, took Rosie's hand. Come on, little sister. Let us go home. That night the house was full. Iron had invited 20 brothers for Harper's belated birthday. Not a party with decorations, just family. People who had stood with them through fire and betrayal and the slow, difficult work of rebuilding trust in a brotherhood that had been poisoned from within. They brought practical gifts from practical men. Motorcycle gear size for Harper, a leather jacket with patches earned through months of proving herself worthy of wearing them. Books about mechanics and engineering. Tools of her own because Iron said every rider needed their own tools and needed to know how to fix what broke. Rosie gave Harper a drawing, not the nightmares from before the fire, those dark, desperate maps and burning stick figures. Something new, something beautiful. Two girls standing in front of a house, holding hands, smiling under a sun that looked warm and safe and permanent. And underneath, in Rosie's careful handwriting, the letters straighter now, more confident, we saved each other. Harper hung it on her bedroom wall where she would see it every morning when she opened her eyes. Late that night after everyone had left and Rosie had fallen asleep clutching the teddy bear with the missing eye, Harper stood on the porch with Iron, father and daughter looking out at Chicago lights in the distance. You did good today, Iron said, with those kids. I learned from watching you with Rosie. You could have sent me away that night at the clubhouse. Could have believed Viper when he called me a con artist. But you chose to see me. You earn that. Every day, you earn it again. By being brave, by being kind, by refusing to let the world make you small, even though it tried harder than it tries with most people. Comfortable silence settled between them. The kind that exists between people who do not need words to fill the space because the space itself is enough. Then, Harper asked the question she had been carrying for weeks. Do you think we will ever really be safe? Iron considered this for a long time. I do not know. This life is not safe. Brotherhood is not safe. Being visible is not safe. But being invisible was not safe either. You nearly froze to death in my basement. He paused. Maybe the question is not about being safe. Maybe it is about being alive, really alive. Surrounded by people worth fighting for even when fighting is hard and the cost is more than you expected to pay. Harper thought about 20 homeless kids learning to rebuild an engine, about Rosie drawing pictures of sisters instead of fires, about Marlene slowly learning to speak about grief without it becoming a weapon, about 1,000 bikers who dropped everything to protect two girls they barely knew because the code said family was worth any price, and the president had two daughters now. Yeah, she said, I think you are right. Happy birthday, kid. Thanks, Dad. The house lights glowed warm behind them. Inside, Rosie slept without nightmares for the first time in as long as anyone could remember. On Harper's bedroom wall, the drawing hung in the dark. We saved each other, and outside Chicago stretched endless under March stars full of invisible people who just needed someone to see them. Harper pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages from the kids she taught, thanking her for class, asking about next week, requesting help with things that had nothing to do with motorcycles and everything to do with surviving another day on streets that did not care whether they lived or died. She posted one last message about the fire and everything that came after. A photograph of her teaching class surrounded by homeless kids, all of them with grease on their hands, all of them smiling, all of them visible. 6 months ago, I was invisible, cold, hungry, forgotten. I thought survival meant hiding, making myself small enough that the world could not find me to hurt me. I was wrong. Survival means being seen. It means risking everything to save someone else. It means choosing family and courage and mattering even when it is terrifying. To every invisible kid reading this, I see you. You matter. You are not alone. And when you are ready, choose to be visible. Choose to save someone the way someone saved you, because that is how we survive, not by hiding, by standing up and refusing to let the world erase us. The following week after class, Sadie approached with urgency in her eyes. Harper, there is a girl outside. She has been sleeping in the alley behind the center for about a week. Will not talk to anyone. Will not take food. She just sits there against the wall and tries not to be seen. She looks like you did in that video, before the fire, scared and alone and trying so hard to be invisible that she is almost succeeding. Harper's heart clenched. She knew that look, had worn it on her own face not so long ago. Sadie led her to the alley. There, curled against a dumpster in clothes too thin for March was a girl, maybe 12, dark hair tangled and dirty, eyes hollow with hunger and fear, and the desperate hope that if you made yourself small enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, the world would forget to hurt you today. Harper knelt down slowly, non-threatening, the way you approach something wounded that might still run. Hey, I am Harper. You hungry? The girl's eyes flickered up, met Harper's for 1 second, then dropped. But she nodded, small, barely visible. Come inside with me. Let me teach you about motorcycles and about being seen. The girl hesitated, fear warring with hunger, warring with the particular loneliness that comes from being invisible for so long, you start to wonder if you were ever real. I was like you, Harper said softly. 6 months ago, I was sleeping in a basement and stealing warmth from a furnace and trying so hard to disappear that I almost managed it. But someone saw me anyway. A little girl fed me crackers in the dark and called me friend when the whole world called me nothing. And it changed everything. Not all at once, not like a switch flipping, more like sunrise, slow and gradual, and then suddenly you look up and the whole sky is different and you realize the darkness was never permanent. It just felt that way because you had been in it so long. The girl looked up again, really looked this time, seeing Harper not as a threat or an authority figure, but as someone who had been in this exact alley, against this exact kind of dumpster, with this exact kind of fear, and had somehow found her way through to the other side where people had names and homes and someone who asked how their day was. Will you teach me how to be visible without getting hurt? Yeah. Harper extended her hand. That is what we do here. We teach invisible kids that broken things can be fixed, that you can be seen without being destroyed, that survival is not about hiding forever. It is about finding people who see you and choosing to let them in, even though letting people in is the scariest thing in the world when you have spent your whole life learning that people leave. The girl took Harper's hand. Her grip was weak from hunger and cold, and the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than sleep can reach. But her eyes held something new. Something small and fragile and easily extinguished but real. Hope, or the beginning of trust. Or just the recognition that invisibility, while safe, was also its own kind of death. Harper led her inside, where Iron and Rosie were cleaning tools, where 20 other kids who understood what it meant to be forgotten were discovering that they mattered, where a community built from broken pieces was teaching itself that wholeness was not about perfection, but about showing up and trying again tomorrow, even when today had been hard enough to make you want to disappear. The invisible girl in the basement had learned to breathe, had learned to be seen, had learned that the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be found by people who want to find you for reasons that have nothing to do with hurting you and everything to do with standing beside you while you figure out who you are when you are no longer hiding. And in a city full of forgotten people, in a world that specialized in erasing the vulnerable and discarding the inconvenient, Harper and Rosie and Iron and 1,000 brothers and 20 homeless kids and one healing aunt were proving something that mattered more than viral videos or headlines or any of the noise the world made when it briefly paid attention to people it usually ignored. That family was choice. That visibility was courage. That the invisible ones, the broken ones, the forgotten ones, the ones sleeping behind dumpsters and hiding in basements and trying so hard to disappear that they almost succeeded were worth saving. Worth seeing, worth fighting for, worth running into burning buildings for, worth jumping from second-story windows for, worth kneeling on frozen grass and pressing your hands against a small chest and refusing to stop trying even when every rational part of your brain says it is already too late. Because everybody deserves someone who will come for them when they are burning. Everybody deserves someone who will notice the pajama colors are wrong and the IV labels do not match. Everybody deserves a teddy bear left outside their door at 3 in the morning by someone who understands that the smallest gesture of kindness can be the thing that saves a life. And Harper would keep running into fires for the rest of her life, teaching kids, fixing engines, being visible, being seen, because that is what you do when you have been invisible and someone found you anyway. You spend the rest of your life finding others, one extended hand at a time, one shared meal in the dark at a time, one moment of being seen at a time, until the invisible become visible and the forgotten become remembered and the broken discover that they were never really broken at all. Just waiting for someone to notice they were there.